I've seen a number of job descriptions in my career, and I have to tell you, the one job description for the office manager in a practice is the absolute craziest. And why is that? Because everything is in it, making it in reality the job description for many people, and that's a recipe for disaster. The office manager role is crucial. So why do you do this to people? Well, my guest today helps practices manage strategic and operational excellence, including this area, and he's going to help us understand how to use the office manager properly. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. That's usually what they want anyway. And care is better, in my opinion, when the provider owns the practice because they can make all the clinical decisions they think are best, all the business decisions they think are best. Sometimes they relate to each other, sometimes they're interwoven. And I just think it's better when one person gets to look at the entirety of the practice and make the decisions they think are best for patients. It's not always the same when they're split up. We all know this, no matter who it is. Eventually, there could be some tension. Let's just get rid of that and keep it all private. Today, my guest is Daniel Tribby. Daniel is a healthcare provider, effective business growth strategist, award-winning author, top keynote speaker with a vision to help healthcare entrepreneurs build a practice that serves its patients and sustain profitability for the long term. That's a short bio. Question number one is going to ask you to tell us more about that. But Daniel, welcome back to Practice Care.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. It's good to be back again. This is what, number three we've done
Number
together?
three, I think, and we're not done.
Yeah.
It's the year of Daniel. And I'm looking forward to it. That was an unusually short bio. Regular listeners know where I'm going to start. If you haven't listened to an episode from Daniel before, Daniel, fill us in, fill more of the background there.
Yeah,
Help us get to know
sure.
you a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm my bride to be gets on to me about not accepting accolades or compliments very well. So I think that's probably why my bio is super short. But the background for me essentially is I was a provider for 10 years. I got tired of the quantity over quality that was becoming healthcare. The idea that no matter how much you did, you got a slap on the back and they say, cool, how much more can you handle? You know,
Yeah.
even though you're running at high productivity numbers and your customer service ratings are through the ceiling, they always demand more of you at what I think is a sacrifice to the actual patient care model. So I decided I was going to leave that world and never go back to it. I got into medical sales, started my first business in medical sales, fell in love with the regenerative medicine stem cell type of thing, which eventually led me back into the thing I said I was never going to do,
Yeah.
which
Well
was
done.
be a provider or work in a private practice again. So I built one with a colleague of mine in Orlando in 2017. We specialized in regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy, and healing for orthopedics and spine. The
Okay.
vision there was that people would stop having unnecessary orthopedic surgeries and people would stop taking unnecessary amounts of narcotic medications, right? We did really well in that business. I was responsible for the operations and kind of the overall growth aspects that we put into, while my business partner, who is the physician, treated the patients and did that kind of thing. So we sold it in 2023, and in the midst of that just really fell in love with the business process as a whole, right? How do we
Yeah.
run strategically a proper private practice? How do we have great marketing? How do we set our business up so that we're not running around like crazy people or chickens with our heads cut off, but we actually know what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it? We're freeing business owners up from time perspective, and we're creating systems that treat patients the way they deserve to be treated,
Yeah.
transformationally, not transactionally. So
Yeah.
that's me in a 30,000 foot view there.
There you go. And we're talking about proper uses of office managers. I think back to, like, I think of my clients, and I'm thinking of one in particular where she is everything from the bookkeeper to the plumber. And oh my God. And I've learned I would never want the job personally. I'm wondering if from your first experience on the provider side to the second one, if something, if you guys, we're going to get into the office manager, but I guess it's a good place to start. Was the office manager role sort of a better set up the second time than the first time?
I would say probably not. And
Okay.
I think it was better, but it probably wasn't best.
Okay.
And I think what happens is that particular role becomes a linchpin, right? So they
Hmm.
become kind of the go-to for every piece of the office. Now,
Yeah.
we ran a cash-based practice. So our office manager had no background in healthcare, which was a strategic move on our part. I wanted
Mm.
somebody who had a sales background because we're dealing with cash paying clientele. And I need somebody that is more in tune with the customer service model, able to speak to patients in a way that makes them feel comfortable, but then
Mhm.
also makes them realize that this is the place for them. This is the modality they should use to get well, and
Yeah.
then not be shy to ask for the money that it takes to create that
Yeah.
atmosphere. Right? So she was our primary salesperson, but then we taught her what it meant to be part of a private practice. So she kind of had a little bit of a dual role. And over time, as the practice grows, right, she starts to bottleneck because she's, a team leader and she's responsible for
Yeah.
implementing and keeping all the SOPs and doing the sales stuff. So it starts to bottleneck a little bit. When we sold, I actually had a different plan in mind for that office manager role versus sales, which we can get into a little bit later if you want.
Hmm.
But if you're in a cash-based practice, it's super smart to have a salesperson, and it's super smart to have an office manager that
Mm.
actually knows how to run the practice appropriately. So,
Yeah. So what are some examples of really bad uses that you've seen, and why are they that way?
um, I think most people view them as a catch-all, right?
Mm.
Go talk to the office manager, right? You have the office manager. Most of the physicians are too busy dealing with patients and patient problems as it relates to their health.
Yeah.
So they want their office manager to deal with all of the employee issues, right?
Hmm.
Or all of the patient complaint problems, right? Have the office manager deal with that. Have the office manager deal with that. Oh, we got a billing issue. Talk to the office manager. So she becomes the go-between for everything. And that's a very poor use of her time. So she's not managing anything. She's
It's
juggling
true.
everything.
Yeah. It's like the office juggler. That's better.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
if you want your highest your office manager to get, C's and everything, by all means, just give her the whole workload while you just treat patients. And then you're
Hmm.
going to be frustrated and you're going to say, well, why is this not getting done? Why is that not getting done? Because you gave 80 hours worth of work to a 40-hour employee.
Hmm. Yeah. And so how do you turn that around? Like, what do you do? Because yeah, I've seen, and that's not just the only one. The only office manager I've known in my career who was okay with it was another woman, the wife of one of the owners. And so she could actually say, well, look, I could just walk out of here. And that's what, but she had the perceived, license to say it. Um,
Yeah. And I would say,
that's rare.
speaking of poor use, if your wife is your office manager, now there are
Handle with
instances,
care.
yeah, that tends to be a little bit of a
I've seen the reverse where it was the husband, and I think it worked. I don't think he was terribly happy because I don't think that's the
yeah,
career path he saw. I'm not sure anybody see. I don't know. I really don't know. Like in that particular case, not to
yeah.
generalize.
I,
Um,
I'm all for a supportive spouse, right? I'm all for, your spouse being like, hey, you want to do this thing? I'm going to help you.
mhm,
Let's do it.
mhm.
The problem incurs when the spouse doesn't have any background in
Yeah.
running a medical practice or any HR or anything, and they're learning on the fly. So at
Mhm,
that point, you're just trying to save money.
mhm.
And what I've seen happen the majority of the time is that the spouse kind of becomes a mama bear, right? Or a lion when it comes to the practice, and they tend to think that it belongs to them
Yeah.
and they know how to do all of the things. And anybody like myself, if I come in and I just say, hey, look, how many hours are you guys working every week as a husband and wife couple? And they're like, oh, 60 to 70. And I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Let me help you fix that. Then the spouse can tend to feel like I'm stepping in on their territory and I'm
Hmm.
devaluing them, which
Hmm.
is not the case. But that's typically what I find with office
Yeah.
managers, their spouses. They tend to get overly protective or they don't need to be. Um, because if you really wanted your office to run smoothly, then you would reach out to people like yourself or like myself who can help streamline things or help improve those processes.
Yeah.
But the mama bear, or mama lion type of thing tends to step in when you have a spouse as an office manager.
So then the takeaway there is we didn't mean to go down this path is if the spouse is legitimately qualified to do the job, keep going. If
Yeah,
not, then maybe not. Okay, so yeah. So how do you take the chaos and turn it into order?
yeah.
What does a good office manager role look like? And keep in mind, like there's, go from like small offices where they're really streamlined and, you know, you can't necessarily have a staff to maybe those that are bigger, but like there's got to be some common threads.
Right. I think that your office manager number one has to have leadership qualities, right? So
Mhm.
that office manager, and the name, the title, the description's in the title, manager, right?
Mhm.
So we should be managing aspects of the business, right?
Mhm.
Without controlling all the aspects, but we should be managing, we should be helping, we should be servant leaders in that
Mhm.
role, right?
Mhm.
So the job description tends to just have all of the things listed in it versus just saying as a middle leader,
Mhm.
essentially this business,
Mhm.
you're in charge for keeping all the cogs oiled and clean and moving, right?
Mhm.
You're not typically directly in charge of just doing all of the things. Okay.
Yeah.
So the biggest issue though is that when we hire them, especially in healthcare, this happens a lot and it's a terrible thing, is we hire by abdication. So
Mhm.
like let's say, okay, so Carl, you're a marketing guy. You're the marketing guy.
Okay.
So if I hire you to work in my practice as a marketer,
Mhm.
in a perfect world, I would say to you, great, Carl, you have the background, you have the know-how. Let me explain to you how my business works and what
Mhm.
my marketing message is, and then let you take it and do your job as a part of the goals, the vision,
Right. Right.
values of my business.
Right.
What we typically do, though, is say, hey, you're a marketer? Cool. Hire you by abdication because you know how to market, go market my practice.
Mhm.
And then when you do something that doesn't align with what my vision of the business is, then now you and I have friction.
Mhm.
So that happens with office managers. Oh, your prior office manager, you have, experience with billing teams or collections or front office management or back office or whatever it is. Cool.
Mhm.
Come on in. We want you here. We'll pay you X amount of dollars per hour or whatever salary you make.
Mhm.
Go do your thing.
Mhm.
We haven't identified what this person's um, values are and if they align with ours as a business,
Mhm.
and then say, I want you to do this job based upon these values, beliefs, missions, visions as our business, right? So you have to give them a job that connects with your business, not just connects with their background, right?
Yes.
So, and then second to that is personality fit. So
Mhm.
there are certain things when you're bringing these people in that they have to fit the personality of the office, or they have to fit a need in the personality realm for the office,
Yeah.
right? So if I hire, if Carl and I run a business and Carl and I hire everybody that's just like us, lots of stuff is going to be missed.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's true.
you should have a healthy frictional relationship with your office manager. They should see things that you don't see. They
Mhm.
shouldn't agree with everything you agree with. They
Mhm.
are there to provide you with a nuance or to help you with your naivete, if you will, and to see things, right? If you are the owner who wants somebody just like them, your business isn't gonna do very well. You need somebody who's willing to step in and say, maybe, but what do we think about this? And you need to empower them to do so, empower them to bring ideas to the table.
Mhm. Yeah, and so as you were describing it, I was thinking maybe it's not quite as extreme as let's get a warm body in there, but it sounds like it's not typically too much more thought. Like we think we know what it is. And really the message that I'm hearing you come back to is you, owner or owners, partners, you need to think through what's really going to work here in
Right.
advance and not always done.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that before we sold, I was in the mode of like I need to divide my office manager into two people.
Yeah.
She was really good at sales, and we wouldn't have the business that we had without her, hands down. Period. If
Hmm.
she see this episode, like we without Denise, we would not have had the business that we had,
Hmm.
100%.
Hmm.
But her passions and what she excelled at was in sales. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, if she's getting bottlenecked and she's doing too much, then I need to move her into the thing that she really enjoys doing. Okay.
Hmm.
Here's another piece of advice for you guys. If you have an office manager, find out what she loves to do and let her do it. Find
Hmm.
out what she's good at and what she loves to do, where those intersect, she will excel for you, or he will excel for you all day long. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would have put Denise right into a predominantly a sales role, and I would have paid her on commissions like a typical salesperson,
Hmm.
and she would have been the highest paid quote unquote office manager in
Right.
all of healthcare history, right?
Right.
She would have, because she can, her closing rate was super high.
Hmm.
And then I would have hired somebody who could do the clerical type of office manager work,
Yeah.
who spoke more of the language of healthcare, who could be the go-between for our third-party billing,
Hmm.
for to be the leader in the office for the staff, right? And could
Hmm.
kind of be that piece, who could take on patient complaints if they got that far, right?
Yeah.
Who could kind of be your office manager needs to be a filter between the doctor and the rest of the office. They need to
Hmm.
be able to be empowered to handle stuff, just
Yeah.
office stuff, and not involve the owners or the physicians until it gets to a certain point.
Yeah. So let's pull that thread because um, you know, I go back to what I said earlier, everything from the bookkeeper to the plumber. That means that everybody's going to the office manager and the office manager's taking care of it. That's the recipe for disaster. Um, how do you stop fires before they start? How do you make, you know, so we've got the mission of the practice, the vision of the practice, the personality fit. Let's imagine those boxes are all checked. You could have those boxes checked and the office manager role could still be disastrous, right? Because if what's the rest of it?
Yeah, we need systems and operations, right? We need
Hmm.
SOPs, actually. So standards of operations, right? Or standard operational procedures,
Hmm.
that live in a binder that anybody can refer to, right? We need
Hmm.
those SOPs in place.
Hmm.
And so the way that I tell everybody to do this is from the time your key goes in the door in the morning until you lock up at night and turn the alarm on,
Hmm.
you should have an SOP for everything that takes place,
Yeah.
right? Standard operating procedure for this is how we open the practice, all
Hmm.
the way through this is how we close the practice.
Hmm.
And that way, and you have everybody read this and sign a form that they've read it. Okay,
Hmm.
you want to hold your people accountable.
Hmm.
But this gives people a place to go when there's any question about operating procedures.
Hmm.
And it removes the linchpin or bottlenecking from the office manager, because the office manager can now say, did you check the SOP manual?
Yeah.
Right. And so if that happens, now the office manager isn't constantly having to take breaks to figure things out. Because every time I have to stop what I'm doing to go do something else, it
Hmm.
takes me several minutes to get back into what I was doing, remember where I was, and get back into that flow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if I create SOPs, right, that makes my practice more efficient,
Yeah.
right? And efficiency is for tasks. Effectiveness is for people. So if
Mm.
I can
Hmm.
create all the efficiencies for tasks,
Hmm.
right? Now people get all of, there's no question. If this happens, this is what we do. Bang, bang, bang. We get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Now, if there is a personal problem or if there's a deeper issue and I need to be a leader and go
Hmm.
talk with my staff, I now have the opportunity to be more effective with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and if you're looking for the difference between, if you're listening to this as a physician, you're like, well, what's the difference between efficiency and effectiveness? They mean the same thing. They don't.
No, they don't.
Because if you've ever had a girlfriend
You
or a
could do
boyfriend,
something really ineffective very efficiently,
right?
and
Yeah.
you could do something that's totally effective,
Mhm.
horribly inefficient, like they're not the same. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the little story that I use is if you think you can be efficient with people, put a 15-minute block in your calendar
Hmm.
as a breakup time with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and tell me if it takes 15 minutes to do that or not. Right? So it doesn't. You cannot be efficient with
Hmm.
that conversation in a 15-minute time block,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
You're going to know why. There's going to be more conversation. You're not going
Yeah.
to be able, okay, I got 15 minutes for this. This isn't working. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to go that way, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a deeper conversation. You got to be
Yeah.
more effective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between the two. So if you're looking for more consistency in the way your office operates, it's usually found in the SOP manual or in most healthcare practices, lack thereof.
Yeah. And another benefit is um, now everything gets better, right? There's less training time. If somebody leaves, we say all the knowledge just walked out the door. You're less reliant. People want to get things done, right? So if they have to wait outside the office manager's door to finish the whatever, everything slows down. People don't want to get slowed down. They want to get everything's better off.
Right.
Everything's better off. And I've learned that because we have SOPs in Market Advisory Group. And how do you know how detailed to make it? I say, if anybody of reasonable intelligence on the street who knows nothing about Market Advisory Group could come in, read it and go, I think I got it. There you go. And if you need to revise it a bit for this, then go ahead, then go ahead. But after a while, yeah, you get really, really good. And that way the frequency of fires goes way, way down and things just
Right.
get operationally smoother and people get
100%.
happier because they know what they're supposed to do,
Yeah. And it's, in this day and age, you have so many tools available to you from AI
Mm-hmm.
perspective that can cut down the amount of time it takes to create an SOP.
Mm-hmm.
There's no really like rhyme or reason behind, like if you're a healthcare provider, you usually write notes in a SOAP format, right?
Mm-hmm.
Subjective, objective, assessment, plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the typical provider documentation method,
Yeah.
right? So you can do something as simple for your SOPs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the situation. These are the steps.
Mm-hmm.
If anything goes sideways, this is who you contact. This is how
Yep.
you report it, anything like that.
Yep.
And you can literally go to Chat GPT if you want and just
Mm-hmm.
type in, create an SOP for an office that specializes in gastrointestinal, patient work with blah, blah, and you can just go and it'll create
Mm-hmm.
it for you. And
Mm-hmm.
you can make adjustments to it. And what used to take days can now take hours to create something like this.
Mm-hmm.
But anything that you can that is systematized should have a proper SOP.
Yeah.
It should have an order of the way to do things and accomplish things.
Yeah.
And it serves as a training tool. So if
Yeah.
you have if your office manager is training your new employees, they can sit down with the SOP manual and say, everything is right here. And we
Mm-hmm.
can go through this. You'll know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it serves as a place for anything that happens that could be considered urgent.
Yeah.
So if you're the business owner, and we talked about this
Yeah.
previously,
Yeah. Why don't you get to this?
the Eisenhower square, right? This is
Yeah.
an old school thing, right? What's urgent versus what's important. So if you can imagine four squares here,
Mm-hmm.
and you have urgent, not urgent versus
Mm-hmm.
important, not important.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working in this square where everything is not urgent and not important, this is a waste square.
Yeah.
Okay. SOP manuals live here. Not urgent, not important. This is where all the things should be SOP,
Mm-hmm.
right? You should be concentrating in these first two, right? The first two squares on the left, right? And urgency, there are things that happen that are urgent that just you have to do as the office manager or as the
Yeah.
owner.
Yeah.
But then you ask yourself afterwards, can I create an SOP for this? And I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you an example. So we had a procedure suite in our office, and sometimes when people haven't eaten, right, and so they go on light sedation, and when they come out of it, their blood pressure sometimes drops.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get it back up, sometimes you have to call EMS. Well, if it drops back down, we have to call EMS. How does everybody know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't think about putting a plan in place until it happened one time. And it doesn't happen often. It may,
Yeah.
I think it happened in the 6 years we own that practice, it happened twice, right? So
Okay.
it doesn't happen often,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an urgent thing that steals time, efficiency, and effectiveness from people in your
Mm-hmm.
office because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, we don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happens the one time, you create it. If this happens, this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every time something urgent happens, you use that to create an SOP
Mm-hmm.
so that it relieves you of future problems with that,
Yeah.
future questions, or I dare I say distractions, because a patient who needs medical help isn't a distraction,
Understood. Yes.
but it does affect the emotional response and the ability for your team to refocus in for the rest of the day.
Right.
But when you do that, you've now freed yourself to work on the things that are important. What's really
Yes.
important to driving the business?
And
If I have
every
an SOP,
role should have a relatively small number of the things that are important for that role.
yep,
They should. And that's where that person should be spending the majority of their time.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important. If you want your staff to be efficient, create ways for them to do that. Put systems in place where there's no question about what's to be done.
Mm-hmm.
If you have staff coming to your office to ask you half a dozen times a day what to do with XYZ, you
Yeah.
need a better SOP manual.
Yeah. Or some sort of change in decision making or something. Yes, because yeah, I used to get in the habit when I was managing people of, hey, if I weren't here, what would you do? And boy, 99 times out of 100, they had a really good answer.
Text you, call
I,
you.
yeah, right. You're right. Right. Now, what if I wasn't here? What if I wasn't available? What if you had to make this call on your own? What would you do? Um, but yeah, the more time you could spend on important things. And then to go back to what I said at the beginning of the episode, the worst job description, one of the worst job descriptions I've ever seen. For some reason, marketing does this too. Kitchen sink um,
Mhm.
is the office manager. And you start to look at it and go, what's important? Is that really important on a daily basis? Is it really important? And if you've got too many eyes, too many importance, you gotta have a look because it's just not possible to get all
No.
that done. Yeah. So cool, man. So is there anything we should have hit that you think we didn't hit? We did cover a lot of ground, but um,
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's super smart to have a who do we hire type
mhm,
of brainstorming session, and why do we hire those people. There's a brilliant book out there called Who, as a matter of fact. I can't remember the author right offhand, but
mhm.
it talks about how we hire people, and not just hiring them because of their accolades, but hiring them with a specific goal in mind,
Yeah.
right? And like I mentioned earlier, we just hire typically by abdication
Mhm.
rather than hiring with a goal in mind. You know,
Yeah.
the goal, what is the goal for hiring an office manager? What do you want them to do
Mhm.
between 0 and 30 days, 0 and 90 days, and
Mhm.
then from that 90 days on to 12 months? What do you want them to do? What
Yeah.
is their purpose for existing in that practice?
Yeah.
And does their skills and capabilities align with what you want them to do?
Yeah.
So if you can match those two things together, you'll have a much better hire and a much better experience.
Yeah, we had a different, I guess, a different episode, got well over a year ago. Um, and he's an optometrist, ophthalmologist, forgive me, Dr. Neil, if I got it wrong. But, and then he also runs a staffing company. And his whole thing was we spend very little time on the actual competencies because we can find that. It's all about fit. And we go into great depths on fit because that's such the difference maker is if two people can balance the books and one's a disaster personality wise and the other is not, that's what you want to find out.
Mhm.
Because it's easier to test for those other things. It was also about, did they read the job description? So they drop like a little nugget, like on the 35th bullet, you know, please put this sentence in your response in the
Right.
email. And if they didn't, they're like, well, they can't even read the job. So yeah, these little tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one thing I'd like to say is if you're going down the path of an SOP and you're starting, it can seem daunting. Start with things that are repetitive.
Yeah.
It's the easiest one. I mean, the daily things, because first of all, they're repetitive, so you all know them. And secondly, it's more likely that somebody's going to have a question about something they do often than something they do not do often. And
Right.
so, and so get those done and just kind of dip your toe in there.
Yep.
But I
And
think
try to make
that's,
them bulleted so they're easy to follow. Like, if
yeah,
you have paragraphs in your SOPs for emergency protocols, people are going to get lost, right? They're not going to be able to
yep,
remember them.
yep,
So think about, like, if the key hits the hole, right? We open the
yeah,
door, turn the alarm off with your unique code. If you forgot your code,
yeah,
see this page in the manual, right?
yeah.
And then call on the lights, turn the phone assistant off,
Hmm.
turn on the computers, right? Like all of that. Check
Yeah.
the voicemail. Like, this is what you do from the time the key hits the hole to the time you put your button chair, right? This
Hmm.
is what you do. So if you were going to give somebody step by steps for that, then everything should be the same type of bulleted step by step, and try to make it the least amount of steps as possible, right?
Hmm.
I try to tell people, if you go over 7, people are going to forget.
Yeah.
All right. You can
Yeah.
keep it under 7,
Yeah.
right? 3, 5, or 7 steps, you're going to be winning in the SOP manual world.
Yeah. And there's a balance about how much detail you go into, but yes, the
Sure.
fewer numbers, because the more you put in, that, believe it or not, in the effort to try to make it more clear by adding more, you actually make it more confusing.
Right.
It's ironic, but it's true. Where can somebody get started? We kind of hit a couple of things. Where would, like I said, start with repetitive stuff, start with, key to key. Um, if we
Yeah.
go back to not so much SOPs, but just the office manager role, like where can how can somebody get started? If they're listening to this, they're going, yeah, you know what? We've got a problem. Or I'm an office manager. Geez, I didn't realize it, but I'm in a terrible situation. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Well,
Yeah. I
how
think,
can they turn this around?
yeah, I would say first identify if you have the right people in the right seats on the bus. That's
Hmm.
important, right? Do we have the right people doing the right things?
Hmm.
And if we do, if they're the right people, but they're doing the wrong things, we got to make
Hmm.
that switch, right? So,
Yeah.
and if they're the right things and the wrong people, you got to make that switch. If it's the
Hmm.
wrong people and the wrong thing, you just
Yeah.
burn it down, start it all over. So, but I think you have to determine that first. Do we have the right people on the right bus?
Hmm.
Okay. And if that's yes, then you need to say, okay, well, let's jot down everything that we do. This is the most monotonous thing on the planet. But if you are the owner or the office manager, you go through and write down every single thing that you do in a daily, like
Yeah. Just keep track
everything,
of it.
right? In the first week, write down everything that you do every single day, right? And what I tell people initially, and this seems like a big bomb, just I hand it to them, but can you get rid of 50% of it?
Hmm.
And by get rid, it means is it excess? You don't need to do it.
Hmm.
Or can it be systemized so it's not somebody else's regular responsibility, right, to do those things, right?
Or
So
could it just be stopped completely?
yeah,
Like
is it
what if you
waste?
just didn't do that thing at 2 o'clock that Wednesday,
Right.
and just blew it off? Would it matter?
What's necessary? Keep doing
Yeah.
it. What can be systemized? SOP it.
Yeah.
And what's waste? Get rid of it.
Yeah, it's a task diary. I've done it before, and my only advice is when you read over it, pour a drink of something because
Yeah,
it's not a happy episode to look it over. Um, because the other thing, you look at it and you go, "Oh my God," and then the second thought you have is because if you've done the job even for a month, I needed to get these certain things done. That's the job, but I had to do all these other things, like
mm-hmm.
unclog the toilet, and I keep coming back to that because it
Right.
just sticks in my mind. Like I've actually asked this client, like, it has to be you. Like, how come it has to be you? And just the look, like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, and
You
if
know?
most people will hear that and they'll go, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. It's going to take up too much of my time." I'm like, and that's fine. Your life is perfectly optimized for the results that you're getting right now. So if you're happy with those results,
Yeah.
don't change anything.
Yeah.
If you want different results, re-optimize. You got to change stuff,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's kind of where it starts is evaluating what am I really doing and what do I not need to be doing
Yeah.
that could be systemized or delegated. And then, what's waste? What needs to be got rid of? Like, why are we doing it this way?
And what
You
about
know?
the office manager who just feels like he or she has to have kind of a difficult conversation with the owners because they look at this and they go, "Oh my God." Like, I don't know if anybody was aware of this, but I am now owner X. Any tips there? Like,
I would say it's your responsibility to be part of the relationship, right? I have this conversation with these kids in my house, right? You guys want better relationships, you're both responsible for it, right? So the same thing. If you want a better relationship, or you feel like you need to be more, you feel like your owner, your physician isn't open enough to hear what you have to say, then it's on you to help create that relationship as much as it is for the owner to create that relationship.
yeah,
So you both are part of the relationship. So if you want it to go well, you both have to contribute to it.
yeah,
And I would say that if you're in the beginning stages, you want to hire one of these people, the first 30 days that they're on board should be nothing more than I call it culture training, but culture is the unspoken,
yeah.
feeling error in the office. And then the other one is the actual spoken word. I'm like, well, how do we communicate here? What's the language here? The terminology in an orthopedic office is different than one in a GI office, right?
Hmm.
So there's two different types of culture there. So you're responsible for learning that culture, right? And then in the next 60 days,
Yeah,
starting to implement any of the changes or things that you see. And if you are a provider or an owner hiring an office manager, they need to feel empowered to come to you with suggestions.
yeah.
Whether or not you take them or not, doesn't matter. You still have to be open to hearing what they have to say
Hmm.
and going from there.
Yeah. I mean, you're hiring somebody with leadership. You should be. Why would you hire somebody with that level of quality if you're just going to blow them off? So, yes. Yeah. Cool. Uh, this has been great. Thank you, Daniel. This is it's such an important topic. It's such a linchpin, and yeah, a lot of good sort of, in my opinion, at least practical takeaways for anybody listening. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. It's always a pleasure, man. Enjoy these.
Yeah, and you've provided contact information. We're going to get to the show notes of your episode. So anybody who wants to get a hold of you, they now have yet another way to do so. Couple of points before we wrap up. First, if you're like Daniel or I and you serve private practice owners, or if you're a private practice owner yourself, you've got some experience and expertise on the business side of private practice, please, we want you to come on Practice Care and share it with the world. In the show notes for Daniel's episode and each episode, there's a link, couple of clicks. It's super quick and easy. Just tell us what's on your mind and we will get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, Practice Care is one word, easy to search and subscribe to. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe. New episode drops every week, and that's the easiest way to stay up to date. Thanks very much, and until next time.